Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, Mega March Q&A part is upon us. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. This is nothing to do with March Madness, though. I don't think, unless you have any Purdue basketball thoughts, which you always seem to.
I do not. I have not watched a single minute of college basketball this year.
It's been a pretty good season, and I don't watch much. But from what I've seen, Miami of Ohio is still undefeated. And there's controversy around
31-0.
The bubble and Miami of Ohio if they lose to whoever in the MAC championship game as we record this March 9th is when we're recording this. And then I saw there was a huge game here, and I watched part of it, Duke, Michigan in Chicago.
Yep.
With native Chicagoland son, John Shire, and Duke coming back here and looking good. I went to Oregon Northwestern. It was low-quality basketball.
What was that experience
But
like?
it's fun to see basketball in person, always, no matter how high or low or medium level it is. So I'm not going to be good for your bracket this year necessarily, but I don't know. I feel like college basketball is on like a bit of an upswing right now. I like it.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And as we're recording this, I guess we've got about a week and a half until the tournament officially kicks off. At that point, I will have very strong opinions of the teams that are playing in this because I have pools that I need to fill out. So the research has not started yet. The research will commence, I would say, late Sunday evening.
I can't wait to hear all of your thoughts. You know what you have to do? Roger Sherman. That's all you need.
With his 3 upset picks.
You need Roger Sherman doing his deep dive, and in Roger we trust.
Well, welcome back, one and all. I am Ty Hughesdan. This is Solid Verbal. This is part 2 of our Mega March Q&A episode, as I said at the very top. Go back and listen to the episode that we dropped on Tuesday. That is part 1. Had a bunch of questions that were tons of fun to answer. We closed out on a very interesting note, talking about tailgates and musical acts, and, well, we don't want to spoil the fun. Go back and listen if you have yet to do so. On today's episode, we got a bunch more questions that we're going to address. If there is any carryover, we will do our part to bring those to the Verballerhood as part of our Thursday bonus episode, which you can find out at verballers.com. But without further ado, let's get to it.
Congratulations, Skippy. You've got mail.
You've got mail on the Solid Verbal.
As often as we can, Dan, and usually once a month throughout the course of the off-season, we like to pay homage to the fine verballers that choose to send in questions. If you are new here, hit follow, hit subscribe so that you do not miss any future opportunities. Let's go to Bob. Bob wants to know, what are 3 surprise teams that could make the playoff next year that no one is tracking right now, Dan? Love this question from Bob. Thank you, Bob.
I have a couple answers here. I don't know if you want to go first or if you want me to go first, or we just go back and forth and have a little mini draft. What do you want to do?
We should do a mini draft.
Okay.
I think that would be fun. I will say this as a bit of a, disclaimer. I have started writing up preview content already.
Okay.
So I have some actual opinions on this. I haven't done the full deep dive or anything yet, but I am much, much further along.
But you're doing it
in this offseason.
You're doing it PBT, pre-blind transfer season.
PBT.
Okay.
But I have some opinions. So I don't know. Here, I have this. I have this coaster that we maybe stole from the college football playoff way
probably.
Back when.
Heads or tails?
Here. You get the side with the football. I get the side with the cork.
Okay.
All right.
Good audio.
This is great. Great audio. Cork.
All right.
I'm up first. Oklahoma State.
Oh, man. That really is off of the conversation. Okay.
He said that no one's tracking. Oklahoma State new coach, Eric Morris.
Okay.
They are basically North Texas, but north of Texas in Stillwater, Oklahoma. They most certainly will have an offense with the transfers that they brought over, not the least of which is Drew Mestemaker.
Okay.
And I think with the roster they've been able to put together via the portal, it's at least interesting. There are obvious questions about defense and some other spots on that roster, but looks to me like a workable conference schedule. I'm not predicting this, but I am just saying nobody should be surprised if Oklahoma State has a bit of a sudden rebirth now with the collection of transfers and the coaching staff that Morris brought with him from North Texas.
Yes. And obviously the offensive skill talent specifically from North Texas is what is going to, Caleb Hawkins at running back had a sensational year last year.
White Harris, receiver.
Right. And it's the total number of new players is 53, according to 247. So whatever Oklahoma State is this year, it's not going to look similar to where they were last year, even if they go 5-7 or something this season. That's a jump. But again, that number 53, and if your starting point is one of the best 8 quarterbacks in the nation, now we have to see it against a more difficult schedule. But I think when you look at what his arm is and what his athleticism is, Drew Mestemaker
he's the real deal.
Yeah, there's every reason to believe in him as a top flight quarterback.
He's the real deal.
And turn down interest from other humongous places to go to Oklahoma State. So obviously everybody's evaluating him similarly. I think Oklahoma State's a good answer. I went with another Big 12 team that I think is closer, that I don't think is in the conversation in a serious way at the moment. And that's Houston.
Okay.
Houston won a bunch of games last year, but I feel like they went sort of unrecognized, maybe because of the conference, maybe because of the teams that they beat. They beat a good Arizona team, but they did give away that West Virginia game with a couple turnovers, and they basically gave away 14 points and lost by 10. But Connor Wigman, adding Mekhi Hughes, bringing back the receivers, bringing back basically everybody who started on that defense.
Yeah.
I have Houston pretty high in the conversation about teams that are like, everybody's looking at the Big 12 as sort of well, it seems at this moment in March, Texas Tech, BYU, maybe Arizona State kind of conference at the moment. I think Houston should be right there with, Texas Tech starting over somewhat on defense and at quarterback. I think Houston's in a really nice place. Schedule is sort of, I think, front-loaded, I want to say, for Houston. But I have Houston as my first of 3. Who's next for you?
Washington.
Okay. Why Washington?
You don't like this, I could tell.
I'm open to it, Ty.
I say Washington because I like the roster.
Okay.
I like the roster. I'm not crazy about the schedule. I'll tell you that. There are 5 very losable games on this thing. They're at USC. They're home against Iowa, home against Penn State, home against Indiana. So at least it's a good home slate.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are at Oregon later in the year. That Indiana game, though, is a really interesting sandwich spot.
For Indiana?
For Indiana.
Okay.
Because Indiana is playing host to USC the week before the Washington game. Then they're on the road in Seattle. Then they come back home, I believe back home, but at least back into Indiana, let's say, for the Old Oak and Bucket rivalry game.
Where's that game being played?
I'd have to check. I don't have it in front of me. But either way.
Game is in Bloomington. Game is in Bloomington.
It's in Bloomington. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Either way, the Washington game is sort of in between, I think, 2 other games that have varying degrees of significance.
Yeah.
I like DeMai Williams, especially now that he's staying put. I think the roster as a whole is really sound. Up at Washington, they bring a lot back from a year ago. So in this world where we're talking about the mega conferences of the SEC and the Big Ten potentially getting 4 or 5 teams in, I'm not saying I'm predicting this, but I like where Washington is at. And if I am drafting second pick here in this weird list, I would probably go Huskies.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, Washington opens the season with the Apple Cup, yes?
With the Apple Cup, yep.
They just got, this was going to be something I brought up for, I think, the G5, G6 conversation teams. Wazoo, now back in the Pac-12, we're approximating the Pac-12 to be, brought in UC Davis as quarterback. It is a not-nothing transfer. Redshirt freshman last year was a Walter Payton Award finalist. Caden Pinnick, I believe his name is. New coach, obviously, and Kirby Moore. Wazoo could be sneaky. A lot of transfers. They could be sneaky. I don't know.
Okay.
They're a sneaky team to me, not a be on high alert team right now.
Okay. Who's your pick?
My next pick after Houston is Tennessee, which is kind of a cop-out pick because they were in the playoff 2 years ago, but they kind of fell off for a bad season. I just think they're super interesting. They bring in a ton on defense, especially in the secondary out of the portal. They bring in a top tier defensive coordinator. Is that still fair to say in Jim Knowles?
Jim Knowles, I think so.
They brought in, if he's not the best, he's one of the best 3 defensive line transfers in the sport, and Chaz Coleman.
Yep.
That's not nothing. A lot's going to fall at quarterback, whether it's Faison Brandon or George McIntyre. Their schedule's not horrible. I don't mind Tennessee as a team that's not in the conversation at the moment as a top flight team as being somebody who sort of slithers their way into the conversation. But it's not as off the conversation as your first pick. I agree.
You ready for my next one?
I'm ready.
Florida.
Also considered Florida here.
The schedule is a gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
But they do play Ole Miss. They play Oklahoma. Both of them are at home. I really like the roster. I went up and down this roster before jotting them down. I really like the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the coaching staff. I am in no way sold on Aaron Philo as any kind of tour de force at quarterback.
Right.
But it's notable that they brought his offensive coordinator down from Georgia Tech, Buster Faulkner. So there's some familiarity there. And I think John Summerall has a bit of a track record with just sort of adapting his system to whatever the personnel is. So again, it's a tough gauntlet SEC schedule, but I like what I see when I look at the roster. And
Okay.
so with that as a starting point, obviously they got a mesh. There's a lot new there, but I'm more bullish on Florida than I expected.
All right. I've got one that is maybe even below Oklahoma State in terms of where they've been and what they have to offer.
Oregon.
Not Oregon.
Not okay.
I'm just saying that the universe is evening out things in terms of schedule for this team. They've had an awful, difficult, impossible scheduling these past couple years, I want to say. They go heavy in the portal once again. They do have a playoff coach, and they miss basically everybody good in their conference. Are you ready for playoff Wisconsin? Now, hear me out.
As you were saying that, I'm like, is he going to say Wisconsin? Go ahead.
Okay.
I got to hear this. I want to hear this.
Okay. So they went heavy in the portal once again. A million new offenses. It's like 5 receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs. Like they're trying to remake everything. And this is not a new story for Wisconsin, obviously.
Sure.
They obviously have whiffed on a couple of quarterbacks in the portal these past couple of years. Didn't hate Tanner Mordecai. He got hurt.
I'm writing this down. Whiffed on a quarterback. Okay.
I don't mind Colton Joseph.
I really like Colton Joseph.
I don't mind
actually.
Colton Joseph.
Transfer from ODU. He's a good player. Really good player.
I have no idea what their defense holds. I know that their defense in the back half of the schedule last year, especially in bad weather situations, which helps, was able to, I forget what I called them, like a bunch of wrenches heading down a tunnel.
A bucket of wrenches.
A bucket of wrenches. Like there's just a pain.
Yep.
I don't love that they don't seem to have high-level offensive talent around Colton Joseph at the moment, depending on like what your opinion of Abu Sama is.
Yeah, I mean,
but listen to this schedule.
I'm more worried about the line. The line does not return a whole lot.
All reasonable. I'm not saying they're making the playoff. I'm saying if you're talking about elements of a program that could dramatically improve and catch a couple of lucky breaks, they have Notre Dame and Lambeau to start the season. That's going to be very difficult, admittedly. Will not count towards their Big Ten record. Western Illinois, Eastern Michigan. They travel to Penn State. We don't know what Penn State is going to be. Michigan State, I have a pretty good idea that Michigan State's not going to be scoring 45 a game, in my opinion. At UCLA, after a bye week, it's a good time to have UCLA, a winnable game potentially for Wisconsin. They get USC at Camp Randall before they have a very difficult game at Iowa and Kinnick. Rutgers, at Maryland, at Purdue, Minnesota. So if this serves, no Indiana, no Oregon, no Ohio State, no Michigan. Correct?
You could do worse than that.
No Washington. Correct?
Yeah.
Although they did
You could
beat
do worse
Washington.
than that.
They beat Washington.
They beat Washington. But you could do worse. You could do a lot worse than the schedule. Yeah.
So they've had terrible schedules recently. This is it's a light lift in terms of what it could be in a conference like the Big Ten. So, again, I am not a believer at the moment, but they are somebody who is nowhere near the conversation that could catch a couple breaks.
Let's go to Raul, Dan.
Okay.
Raul says that he's been thinking a lot this offseason about inertia.
Who hasn't been?
Inertia in college football, that is.
Oh, okay.
He says Bill Connolly kind of gets at this in his SP Plus with the idea that recent momentum can be a pretty good indicator of short-term performance, future performance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time that holds, but not always. Michigan looked dead in the water in the Ohio State rivalry going into 2021. Then Jim Harbaugh broke that inertia. Kurt Signetti, another example. We tend to assume that what has been true recently will continue being true until suddenly it's not.
Right.
Sometimes a shift comes with a coach, a roster, a building strategy, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you think inertia gets broken in 2026? What feels fixed right now that may not look fixed by the end of the season, Dan? This is a fabulous question from Raul.
Of course.
I'll kick it over to you. What inertia is going to get broken this year?
Oh, I have a couple of answers here in
Okay.
both directions, I think.
Okay.
There is something about Ole Miss right now that I'm not fully sold on at the moment in March. And only because Pete Golding was forced into a situation in which he was able to thrive when I think a lot of people didn't think he and Ole Miss would thrive without Lane Kiffin heading into the playoff. And because even Trinidad Chambliss coming back is like, well, the party continues. They lost pretty much everybody on that defense.
Right.
They lost a lot on that defense, though Sontarian Perkins is back, I believe, at playing that sort of edge buck linebacker. They lost, I think, both tackles along the offensive line. They lost their best two receivers, although Kejuan Lacey is back, I believe.
Yep.
That to me is like I could see it being assumed that Ole Miss is going to pick up where they left off, whereas they had a bunch of key assistants during that playoff run that were now replaced. Like, I think the momentum is more interrupted than it looks at the moment.
Okay.
Do you
That's a
agree?
good answer.
Disagree?
No, I mean, there were extenuating circumstances at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
And, the roster was in place. They already had that thing going pretty good with a ton of momentum into the playoffs, and they were pretty close to making it to the national championship game.
Yeah.
It was a good team. I think it's a fair assumption that it's not going to be just a continuation of what we saw last year. Each offseason brings its own challenges. There are elements of the roster that need to be reconstructed. It would not surprise me. I mean, more to the point that I mentioned Florida potentially as a team that could kind of sneak up on people. I'm not expecting them to make the playoffs, but I call out the game against Ole Miss, and I kind of had a similar thought looking at that game. Like, should be pretty good, but will they be as good? That to me might be a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
Who else you got?
Just in terms of something that appears to be fixed and like, yeah, this is definitely going to continue or is definitely going to head in the right direction. Iowa's offense. I think they are weird eggshells, gust of wind away from not being a disaster, a Brian Ferentz level disaster, but they finished 50th, I believe, in terms of points per drive last year. I don't think it's just assumed that offense is fixed. I think their weird quarterback evaluation, I mean, it's Hecklinski or something that is maybe the leader to win the quarterback battle. It's him and, is it Hank Brown, the Auburn transfer?
Hank Brown, yep.
It's one of those things where we're just like, I'm not positive everything is going to be hunky-dory and continue in a promising direction for the Iowa offense. That's one I don't... Here's the other one I'm not fully sold on. In terms of like, oh, they've fixed it. They addressed this very specific problem in a really responsible way. Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan was on my list.
I don't think you can question Kyle Whittingham as a head coach. I don't think you can question a lot of the talent on this team.
I don't question the hire.
I don't question the hire. But it's also one of those things where a guy has succeeded this century, and they've taken a lot of bites at the apple. Now it's a different era, and there's different, rules of engagement, whatever. But I'm not positive somebody who's been at a place for 20 years can just move and continue his run of success at a completely different place. I don't know. I'm not fully sold that Michigan has immediately made a move. I think they made the right move, but I don't know what that ends up looking like in the win column over these next 3 seasons. A 66-year-old who's only been one place, essentially.
Yeah, I share your concern.
Yeah.
I really do. I have one that I wanted to debate with you.
Please.
Because I don't know how I feel.
Okay.
But I've been thinking more and more about this, and I think I even mentioned it on one of our previous episodes. Can we assume at this point that James Franklin is guaranteed to be a success at Virginia Tech? And this isn't just me with scar tissue talking.
No, I know.
I'm trying to take a step back and be objective here. Because I think to an extent, it's already better than it was, right? Recruiting has been great. He's infused the program with talent.
Yep.
There is a rejuvenated fan base that is going to back this team. And it's a conference and a schedule that's very gettable. Like all of that stuff, I think, holds.
Mm-hmm.
But this assumption that I've heard some sort of speak to out there that now because James Franklin is in a different situation, perhaps an easier conference with many of the same players, he's getting the band back together. This assumption that it's just going to click and that this is going to be the thing that kind of gets him over the hump. I'm not really willing to go there. I think a change of scenery was right for Franklin and certainly right for Penn State at this point, given where things were at. But I am not necessarily of the thought that this fixes all of how James Franklin wants to build his programs. Like I understand the excitement. I need to give it a minute. I need to see how this team looks at the end of September.
See, the thing is, to me, it's the where in this situation. That there's not much obvious standing away of Virginia Tech winning a bunch of games. Maybe not as a playoff type team.
Right. But
the context of where Virginia Tech has been, I just don't think it's going to be a continuation of the worst of the last
it won't be.
2 coaches.
No. I mean, it's going to be better. It has to be better.
So I think he breaks that, right? I think there is going to be something about the talent level. I think the floor is going to be so much higher than it was. I am put off by the competing for a national championship in September has a different job in late November.
Well, and so there's 2 different ways to look at it.
Yeah.
This definitely breaks the inertia that was going on at Virginia Tech.
I agree.
I mean, it's going to be better. So there's that. But the other side of it, and I guess more what I'm speaking to, is just the James Franklin inertia, right? Part of that was broken by him being relieved of command from Penn State. But does that mean that with a new outlook on things and an opportunity to build from the ground up, that is going to fix some of the blockers that have gotten his way of reaching some sort of new level as a college football coach? I don't know if we can assume that.
I think it's safe money to me.
Okay.
Because I think the bar for what is considered successful in Blacksburg right now is clearable.
That's fair. I'm mixed on how I feel about that, but I think it's worth a conversation.
By the way, just sub-topic to this, we got a question from Michael about who the college football equivalent of Mick Cronin is. So I don't think James Franklin is publicly that unlikable, but I think there is a combative nature to James Franklin that puts him as number 4 or 5 for my answer of who college football's Mick Cronin is.
Who is college football's Mick Cronin?
So do you know who Mick Cronin is?
I know, coach of UCLA.
Yes, and he's very combative, criticizes players, criticizes officials, is generally looked at as whiny and unlikable. It's Brian Kelly.
Right.
But he's not an active coach. And then it's Hugh Freeze, but he's not an active coach.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's a good active coach who is that vocal and kind of pissy about everything all of the time, but it was Brian Kelly and to a different extent, Hugh Freeze. Is there somebody like that to you? Because James Franklin can be combative like that.
He can be petty.
Yes.
He can be very petty.
Petty and combative and, I don't know, vindictive.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list. I need to think more about this one.
But, like, who is that outsized coach personality who's just, like, his own team's fans are like, yeah, he's good, but, like, I don't really like him as a human. I don't know who that person is without having Brian Kelly in the active coaching conversation.
We need Brian Kelly back.
Who is that person? I don't know.
I don't know. He was the most unlikable coach.
Yeah, you can let us know. I don't know.
Let's go to our next question. Good one, Raul. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Craig wants to know, do you like college football as much as you used to? Does player movement and NIL make the sport more interesting to cover or more frustrating? Thank you, Craig.
Two different questions with like kind of different angles to view the question.
I think the closer you get to anything, the easier it is to get cynical.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more of a cynic now than I was when we started this thing in 2008.
Okay.
But I don't think that means I like college football any less. College football is different, for sure. And I think people are right to chime in and send us feedback and tell us why.
Yeah.
Like, we appreciate that. That actually is very helpful for you and I to get that kind of feedback from people. But I was thinking about this, and as I said before, it's early March. I'm putting preview content together, and I'm getting excited about it.
Good.
You know,
That's
you
a good
can't
thing.
fake that. You can't fake that.
No.
You know, you're either into it or you're not. And so I get excited about thinking about a new season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under no illusions in thinking that college football is fixed and perfect in any way, shape, or form. We know it is not. But I don't think I like it any less. There are elements of it that are cause for pause, our favorite pet charity. But on the whole, I still love it. That's why we're still doing this. And to the second part of his question, where he says NIL and player movement, does it make it more interesting or more frustrating? The answer to both is yes. The answer to both is yes.
Yeah.
It does make it more interesting, but I would say the level of difficulty for just two people, to track all of this and try to put order to it and organize it and speak about it in any kind of intelligent way. Maybe I'm biased.
We're still aiming for that first show when we can do it.
Yeah, we're still aiming for the first time we can do it.
Yeah.
It is impossibly difficult to keep track of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why most of our competitors in this world, or our colleagues, I'll say, have a bunch of other people that are helping out.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it's hard. It is hard to keep track of all this stuff. And there is nothing more frustrating than when you get a basic thing wrong that one fan base knows that goes under the radar because we're trying to like eat the whole elephant here.
Right.
So it does make it interesting. It also makes it frustrating, but I don't feel any less about college football. I love the sport.
Yeah, I think it makes it more difficult for everybody, right? You want to latch on to players you love. You want to latch on to schedule you're used to, right? It's more difficult to look at college football as a familiar escape because player names are changing, coaches move around. It seems, well, the coaching movement seems to have slowed sometimes. There are some cycles where it seems to slow more than usual. The NIL thing is weird just because in other sports you understand how the business of player payment works. It's a pretty direct thing where it's like, this sport has a salary cap. This is what a max contract is, right? That there's at least some transparency if you're interested in learning about how those things work. There's not with college football. So that makes it more difficult to understand the sport on a certain level. For me personally, I don't like being a college football fan as much as I used to, not because of anything that the sport has done, but because I watch the games by myself. Because the people I watch games with in California, when I live there, don't live where I live. The people I watch games with in New York, and these are sports media people at this point, don't live here. And so the friends that I have here are also parents of young children who can't just come over for 9 hours and watch a bunch of college football. So that makes it more difficult to look at college football as a social experience in the way that it was before. Now, this might just be a dip for me because if God willing, my kids continue to be sports fans like they are now, when they're 11 and 9, 13 and 11 or something like
They're
that,
going to be all into it.
that could be very cool to watch and go to games with them. So then suddenly we're going to have a lift to the experience where I can like hang out with my kids or hang out with their friends or their friends' parents. And like, it'll be like a communal thing in the way that it used to be in a different way. Yeah. So that in that regard, college football fandom is not as cool as it used to be. But yeah, I think the one thing that it does, the NIL thing and portal thing doesn't bother me as much. The conversation being rooted like in what we do and have to pay attention to stuff like realignment and TV deals, like that conversation is nowhere near as fun as arguing about the third best team in the BCS era. Like I like that kind of thing. I liked arguing about schedules and performances and computer. Like I liked that. I didn't feel like that was nearly as toxic and personal in a lot of ways as realignment and Congress getting involved and, you know, injunctions. Like that stuff is not fun conversation. So that we have to do that as much or as little as we do is not fun. But everything changes, everything evolves, and excited to see where we go. But yeah, it's, you know, like everything, it changes with the times.
Change with the times. I mean, I'm into the portal. You know this.
Yeah.
I'm into the portal. I really enjoy tracking that side of it. I enjoy that side of it much more than I enjoy the high school recruiting side of it.
Fair.
If only because it's players that we know in many cases. And there's a near constant source of intrigue about some of the big names. Are they going to stay? Are they going to go? I understand it's not always healthy to be a fan in this type of climate where you're wondering if your best players have any allegiance to your school. That part of it for sure is frustrating. And it's extremely frustrating when we try to put together all of our preview stuff at the beginning of the year and you have to relearn every roster every single season. It's really hard. Yeah. But it is interesting, right?
It's also hard in a like not real life way.
No, well, I'm not. I don't need anyone's sympathy for this,
yes,
but you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, and it gets frustrating. Speaking of which, we did get a question here from Jeremy.
Okay.
You mentioned Congress. Let's talk Congress, Dan.
Oh, can't wait.
Jeremy wants to know, when will the NCAA stop begging Congress for help? And would making players employees solve more problems than it creates? So here's the short answer, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I don't believe the NCAA will ever stop begging Congress for help because it needs Congress's help so that they don't get sued.
Right.
This is the problem. This is where the NCAA finds itself right now. It had rules for an eternity. Most of those have been overthrown. They have lost nearly every lawsuit they have been a part of. And so they need some sort of umbrella legislature that can give them an out, that can allow them to enforce the rules without them being on the hook to be sued if somebody disagrees.
Right.
That is what the NCAA needs more than anything. That's why they brought in a former governor of a state to run it. They needed a politician to try and talk to other politicians to speak that language and maybe give them something of a safety net.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting for that moment to come where we stop having this conversation about Congress, that may happen at some point in the future, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon because they need the help any way they can get it.
Yeah.
Any dispute on that, Dan? Are you with me on that?
No, that's all reasonable. Yep.
Now, the broader question, though, is if you made players employees, is it creating more problems than it is providing answers?
Yeah.
I think yes.
You think it's creating more problems?
I mean, I think it's both solving problems and creating problems.
Right.
It doesn't mean they shouldn't do it because longer term, I think it solves a lot of problems.
I do too.
But in the shorter term, you probably need a players union who's running that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some structure now for it, but you need something like that to negotiate on behalf of the players. The union needs to negotiate with somebody, so you probably need a commissioner or some sort of governing body to work with.
Right.
I don't know who that person is. Just that in and of itself, I think, is a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a sport that no one's in charge of right now. It's a bunch of conference commissioners. So you're talking fundamentally about the structure of the sport. And I think at least initially there would be some big time wrinkles that need to be sorted out with respect to that. How do you get past that? You got to alter the structure of how this thing is run in order to get to that point.
Right.
That is one of any number of problems that I could find with it in the short term. Again, I'm not saying don't do it. I longer term, I think it's probably the only answer that makes sense. But in the short term, it would definitely create more problems.
Yeah, everything's going to both create and solve problems at this point. And it's going to it's playing whack-a-mole. It's plugging one leak and opening up another. Yeah, look, if you are going to be employed, who is your employer? Okay, the school is your employer, and who regulates the schools and who standardizes the contracts? Is it conferences? Is it some sort of new umbrella institution that is, college football or the...
Yeah, let's create another one. What was the thing they had for NIL? Let's create another one of those, and then that'll run the schools. Yeah.
Right. So
it's a big question.
The clearinghouses and you're going to involve more lawyers, as always, billable hours are the winner here. Yeah, if you're looking to standardize contracts, if you're looking to standardize revenue sharing, if you're looking to standardize player commitments to schools and school commitments to players, it is a good thing. Now, there's always, the law of unintended consequences and okay, is the school no longer on the hook for certain amounts of insurance that they were before or medical attention? There's certain things that need to be negotiated, to your point, who is doing the negotiating. And there is the obvious wrinkle of, in professional sports leagues, the top of those leagues, be it baseball, basketball, football, these guys are around for 15, 20 years, right? These are the same people in these rooms with their representatives, their player representatives and their official representatives. How do the players find someone that they can trust that isn't a stooge for the other side or something like that? And when the players turn over so quickly, where is their consistency of vision and message when suddenly this quarterback who had a really good head on his shoulders about how players should be compensated and how contracts should protect players, he's off to the NFL, this inside linebacker, this whoever assumes some kind of leadership position. You're asking for these minds from 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, which isn't necessarily fair. And so how do you find that person who exclusively has the best interests of, his constituents in mind when his constituents basically change every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks, yeah.
So that's the challenge involved here. I think it would be nice to standardize. I'm not saying to put a salary cap on or anything like that. I'm saying it's nice to standardize expectations, punishments, eligibilities. If the NCAA can't enforce it, if they don't have, congressional umbrellas to help things along, I don't know. I think you need to get more things down on paper. And it sounds boring, but I think the sport is craving a lot more consistency than it has right now. And I don't know. I think you need to be player forward, but at the same time, maintaining organization. I know this all sounds vague, but...
Well, it has to be vague.
It kind of has to be vague in this moment.
It has to be vague because nobody has an answer. I mean, there are a number of ideas out there, but nobody has the one specific silver bullet of an answer that's going to fix all of this stuff. But I just think the point stands. We're talking billions with a B,
right,
of dollars that are being pumped into the sport right now. The fan base is growing year over year. College football has definitely entered into and continues on in this moment of real growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that extends to not just the fan base, but just the money side of it as well.
Right.
The money isn't really going away anytime soon. Anytime you're talking about that much money, I'm sorry, you need to standardize a little bit. We need something that sort of puts the toothpaste back in the tube, not necessarily to the extent that has been proposed, let's say, on the federal level.
Right.
Because there are some things you can undo and other things you cannot. But I do think there is a real need and desire at this point for some guardrails here.
Right. I agree.
Tyler wants to know, or no, we asked Tyler's question last episode.
Yeah.
Kyle wants to know, who is your favorite big back of all time? A big back.
Well, you could answer this saying like, who's my personal favorite to watch? And then like, who is the quintessential big back?
Right.
So I would say if you were to say like, what is the body and face and career of the quintessential large running back?
Yeah.
My immediate gut says Jerome Bettis.
Jerome Bettis is the answer. Number 6. He's the answer.
He played at a very visible college.
Yep. Was
deep in the playoffs in the NFL. Had a nickname of a large vehicle.
The bus. I have where's my helmet? Over here. Over on this side of me. I have a Jerome Bettis autograph.
Likable dude with a big smile, marketable dude, right? In commercials.
Oh.
And finished out his career as the fantasy football vulture, touchdown vulture, that benefited millions of people who played fantasy football, who loved to see 6 carries for 11 yards and 3 touchdowns in a single game box score. That to me is there's been, NFL guys, college guys over the years, right? You have the run of Michigan and Wisconsin, Iowa running backs, your big neck rolls, your Mike Allstotts, guys like that for sure. I treasure every single memory of. But man, large running backs. I mean, there's modern era, and you have like the guys who come over from the defensive line for goal line stuff, and that's always super fun. But man,
what about Ron Dane?
Yeah, if your answer is Ron Dane, I don't have an argument against you, other than Jerome Bettis did it on 2 levels in a way that Ron Dane did not.
Jerome Bettis is the answer. Let's be clear. But Ron Dane's another one that came to mind.
Yeah, and you will get guys who have 3-year runs, no pun intended. Your Brandon's Jacobs, right? He was up at least 260, right?
Oh, he was a house.
And you have your like Thunder Lightning combos, which make it, it's seasoning the backfield because they look so much bigger standing next to somebody smaller, or, shuttle, having the Lendale White, Reggie Bush era. You're like, okay, that underscores how much of a brutal runner Lendale White was in a great way, because he was paired with Reggie Bush. And so that's always fun. And it was Allstott with Warwick Dunn, right? With the Bucks.
Correct.
So that, that makes Warwick Dunn look smaller and shiftier, and that makes Allstott look bigger and more bruising. And we've had that at, multiple levels, multiple huge schools, the Thunder Lightning thing. I'm trying of the last 40 years, something like that. I think it's Bettis. I think it's Bettis.
It's funny that we both came to the same conclusion, and it was the very first thought that I had.
So, you're a Notre Dame fan, so.
But even still, I was trying to zoom out. Like, am I being biased here?
Right.
The answer is Bettis. The only answer is Bettis.
But we've had some classics over the years, right? We've had your Toby's Gerhardt. I love doing the plural.
Toby Gerhardt's a good one.
Toby Gerhardt. Like, there's guys like that. Alabama. Like, it almost.
Derrick Henry.
I was going to say Derrick Henry almost doesn't count. Because
he's a little bit too athletic.
He's too much of a superhero. Like, I understand he has the height and weight, but when you look at him, you don't think big back, you think Hulk smash, right? There is something more impressive about his presence. We're like, but he was also running like a 4.4 at that size. Yeah. And Jerome Bettis didn't do 10 yards at 4.4 by the end of his career. And I have to have a little bit of slow movement to my big backs. I want brutal, but he can't be too fast. Derrick Henry's almost too good to be considered a big back.
Right. There's such thing as a one-cut back.
Right.
Like Henry. There is such thing as a no-cut back like Bettis.
Now.
Who just ran straight. That was his game. But he was very good at it. Very good at it.
Honorable mention, just because he was both excellent as a college player, briefly excellent as a pro, and then had weird fat shaming rumors, which I think is part of the full large back experience. Eddie Lacy, I think for me, should be included because once again, that was Eddie Lacy on the 2012 national championship Alabama team, right? Against Notre Dame, I believe. It was Amari Cooper out wide and Eddie Lacy in the backfield. So of the modern era, big, like, and you have your Andre Williams at BC, like you have big successful backs in the modern era. Eddie Lacy deserves to be a part of this this party here.
Dan Klobuchar writes in,
Okay.
what college football documentaries haven't you seen yet that you want to? And what stories would make compelling docs in and of themselves? I don't have an answer for what I'd like to see. I feel like I've seen them all at this point. I can tell you the story I want to make in 20 years.
Okay.
Maybe if we're still friends, we can do it together. In 20 years, I want to make the documentary on college football tampering in the early portal era.
Okay.
That's the documentary I want to need. I want to make. You need to give it enough time so that nobody's going to get in trouble. And so it's like no longer taboo to talk about these things. But I'm talking a Pete Nakos, probably at that point in his early 30s. Whoever is available to talk about this, it is the slimiest thing in sports right now, certainly in college athletics.
Sure.
The tampering that goes on with respect to the portal and NIL and the intersection between the two, and someone needs to make that doc, and I'm volunteering myself to do it.
Oh, Ty, how nice.
Volunteer out of the good graces of my heart.
Yeah.
I volunteer to make that.
Okay, so in terms of the documentaries I haven't seen, I'd like to watch some, the Junction Boys, the old Bear Bryant running Texas A&M players into the ground as likely a bad human, not giving them water and go 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. workouts, stuff like that. I'd like to watch the more historical stuff. I always appreciate geography documentaries in that, like, the Tidewater region of Virginia, right? Like the history of like the players who come out of a certain area, right? That, the players or coaches, right? You have like the weird New Hampshire cradle of coaches with Dan Mullen, Chip Kelly, and Ryan Day. Stuff like that, where you like, what is the culture of this place that produced so many different people that is disproportionate to the actual population? I had friends who did a documentary about Pahokee, which is an area of Florida where a number of NFL players came from, a very poor area, but disproportionately has produced a ton of NFL caliber players. Anquan Bolden was one of the huge ones there. So I always appreciate places because you can tell the story of people and culture in an interesting way, especially as it relates to college football. I've watched a lot of the more recent one, like the 30 for 30 types, Pony Express and the U, and those are always good. Honestly, the people, I don't like listen to this show or watch this show or anything like, but I've seen clips on social media. It seems like Taylor Lewan and Will Compton, who bussin' with the boys, that's what it's called. They always ask their bigger guests, like the story of their recruitment. You could string together all of those clips into the most watchable documentary ever, where like Luke Kuechly is telling the story of playing at St. Xavier's. I think that's where he went to school in Cincinnati, and being recruited by BC because nobody else was there was like a pipeline from Catholic schools in Ohio to BC, that kind of thing. I always appreciate hearing those stories after the fact, especially when NFL players retire and they just story time with those guys about recruiting. So that's always interesting to me. I'm trying to think what else that has always jumped out. Like what we're going to see eventually is, as we distance ourselves, and you mentioned NIL portal and tampering stuff, like we're eventually going to see a documentary about the 2019 LSU team and the enormous personalities on that team. It's not going to make sense to do for another 10 years or so.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to let some time pass before you can go there.
But I always like, and I'm just not going to watch anything done by like conference networks. So if like the SEC network does a 2019 LSU documentary, I might watch it, but like, oh, this isn't as good as it could have been. You didn't have a professional like storyteller do it, or an unbiased storyteller do it. So I always appreciate the looks at specifically historically significant teams. We've had a bunch of the USC ones. I'm reading that new USC book, by the way, by I think it's Monty Burke, The Men of Troy. I always appreciate that kind of stuff. Sort of the deep dives long after the fact and stories of recruitment that are finally told and behind the scenes stuff. So we've had teams like that over the years, dynastic teams, disastrous teams. Like you hear the stories about like Bobby Petrino teams. That might be like a mini documentary about Louisville era Bobby Petrino part 1. But yeah, that I'm always into. The like season specific documentaries probably doesn't deserve the 8-part Michael Jordan treatment, but what are we getting now? We're getting Nick Saban producing his own documentary. Great. I'm sure it's going to be so awesome. But if we had somebody cool doing a Nick Saban documentary, then it would be must-watch TV.
All right.
But yeah, that's my answer.
Do you have any of these other questions here
that stand
that
out?
you have a particularly strong answer to? Because we have a bunch.
Yeah.
Anything we don't get to today, we'll try to incorporate as part of our Thursday bonus pod. What stands out? Are there any other ones on here that really were?
I'll go through these quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
Which college football quarterback and receiver combo would make the best figure skating pair? I'm opening this up to historical. Okay. I did a medium dive on this. You probably need a smaller receiver, right?
Need a smaller. Gotta be some sort of like jitterbug. That's the person who gets thrown. Right.
So, well, now there are some instances where the quarterback is smaller than like Mike Evans and Johnny Manziel, right? The quarterback smaller than the receiver.
And Manziel he definitely had some twinkle toes, which I think agility is very key if we're talking about figure skating in a pair. Need that.
We've had some
quick feet.
We've had some great tiny receivers over the years, your Trindon Holiday types. Recently we had Bo Nix and Tez Johnson who have like the family connection, right?
Yes.
Tez Johnson, very small, could be thrown pretty easily. In the news for all the wrong reasons at the moment. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
I've seen some of it.
Oh, man. Can't do that. I kind of like the two smaller guys together that they're interchangeable. Like a Stetson Bennett, Ladd McConkey pairing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate that.
I was thinking, and this is going back, I guess, 2 years now, but what about like a Noah Fafita T-Mac connection?
No, Fafita is also smaller than T-Mac.
That's right. I think he's under 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily fleet of foot in the sense that he's a crazy mobile quarterback,
right?
But T-Mac is just a monster, and so I feel like, and there's also like a high school connection there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of the unspoken bond you need if you're going to be a strong figure skating
That's also
pair.
true.
You need to have that sort of nonverbal communication down pat, which I feel like those guys probably had.
Right. I think that's right. Devontae Smith was very slight, especially when he got to Alabama. This doesn't answer the specific question, but like Pat White, Steve Slayton, there's just the legendary chemistry there. He's a running back, not a receiver. So somebody like that, I wouldn't hate. I don't know anything about figure skating. I don't know anything about figure skating roles. I don't know anything about the sport of it other than I watch it on TV every 4 years. So that's all I really have. What if, this is from Jay Meyer, what if any personal foul resulted in an ice hockey style power play for the next 3 downs instead of penalty yards? I kind of love this.
I love this idea.
I kind of love it.
Idea. This is the best idea I've ever heard.
I kind of love the idea of not suspending a targeting penalty for the following week, which I know is now under consideration. The idea of having a 10-man defensive plan on all 3 levels. If we're down a defensive lineman, if we're down a linebacker, if we're down a defensive back, that you have to have a 10-man plan for 3 plays.
This is a brilliant idea. I love it.
I mean, you're going to drive defensive coordinators to an early grave, but
sure.
I'm kind of into it just because, look, penalty yards are very easy to keep track of, right? You target somebody, it's a personal foul, you lose 15 yards. The idea that you could win a power play, a shorthanded power play in football with 10 guys, you're like, yeah, we forced 3 and out with 10 dudes. I don't know if you give them some kind of reward, but you keep track. You keep track of power play successes. So I don't hate it. I don't mind it at all.
Penalty killing's a stat in the NHL.
Exactly right.
College football. I love it.
Okay, quick from Ann Capistan. G5 teams that could make the playoff next season and win a game.
Yeah, you had some thoughts on this.
Okay, This is tough. Boise loses a bunch, but they return Maddox Madsen. I believe they're running back as well. Their schedule is difficult. They open at Oregon. I want to say they travel to Western Michigan, who won the MAC last season. I think they have Memphis as well. Year one coach at Memphis. San Diego State is interesting. They need an offense. I don't think it's coming out of the Sun Belt with James Madison starting over. I looked at primarily Pac-12 has Boise. Mountain West has UNLV if Jackson Arnold works out, and I kind of feel like he's in the best possible situation to work out with Dan Mullen at UNLV. They're interesting, but now North Dakota State is that added wrinkle to the Mountain West. They're replacing a quarterback. New Mexico returns their quarterback in Jack Lane, but he wasn't spectacular, but their schedule's pretty good. In the American, there's just so many teams that, Memphis is starting over, USF is starting over, and they're starting over without Byron Brown. Like, there's just the Americans going to be tricky, especially because Navy looks like the power right now, and unless Navy gets crazy lucky getting a team in the playoff, let's say they make the playoff, they're going to need a team that is excellent in every regard except run defense. So they need to get like a USC team who is somehow the 5 seed with no run defense. Or like last year, I think Utah was like kind of excellent at everything but stopping the run. So I don't have that obvious team right now.
No, I don't. And I struggled with that because I wanted to answer the question.
But those were the teams that jumped out as right now. And I mentioned the Wazoo and Caden Pinnock thing, that he could be an intriguing quarterback for Wazoo. But I just don't think, they were another team that brought in like 40 new transfers with a new coach. So it's just too much new at a lot of these places, unfortunately.
I agree.
Next question. Why do college programs seem better at evaluating and developing quarterbacks than the NFL? Brandon wants to know. Because the quarterbacks don't play against NFL defenses in college.
That's what I wrote down.
You got a lot of guys who are going to go on to internships. You got a lot of guys who are going to go on to work for car dealerships, stuff like that. You're just like, you're not playing against NFL corners or edge rushers or anything like that. So,
and you can get away with quarterbacks who aren't perfect.
Yeah.
In college. And that's just not the case in the NFL. Everybody is quick.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is a little bit higher level with respect to the scheme.
Yep.
And understanding the game. And the margins are just ridiculously thin, as opposed to the college game where it depends on your conference, obviously depends on your opponent, depends on the players you have around you. Even though college football has changed, and I think there is a little bit more parity, you can still go really far if you have just a collection of like 4 or 5 really good players. And that's just not the case in the NFL. It's just a lot more homogenous across the board. And you need quarterbacks that are going to be near perfect, which is why there are so few of them in the NFL that actually succeed.
Right.
So it's just different. It's just different. I personally, that's why I like college football more, because we have that disparity.
Agree.
But it's not apples to apples.
Final question from Henry. Ty, power rank your ex-girlfriends in detail.
There is no Henry on here.
I don't
you
think
made
that's
that
appropriate. But like Ty, the question's out there now.
You made that up. No.
I think that's sort of it. Is there any other questions you want to get to?
No, I want to thank the Verballerhood for sending in these questions. We had a bunch of really, really good ones. We still have some on the list. We'll do our best to address some of those on the Thursday bonus podcast that you can find out at verballers.com. While you're there, if you want to sign up, it does go directly to Dan and I to help support the team. You get episodes a little bit early without the ads. You also can hop on our Discord and get access to any of the other stuff that we post out there whenever we're looking for feedback, stuff of that nature. Again, if you made it this far, follow or subscribe to help support what Dan and I do. We have tried to do one of these per month through the off season for, gosh, I don't know, last 5 years, something like that. We've been doing a lot of Q&A here in the off season.
And once again, you do not have thoughts on episode 2 of DTF St. Louis.
I do not. No, I'll have to go back and watch and be a little bit more specific in my feedback. But
I don't think it's a great show. I think the trailer and title hooked me, and that Bateman's in it. There's a couple of like A+ gags. Like, it's kind of a dark comedy, and it's a very messy show at the same time with like serious themes, but there's a couple of gags that are A+.
All right.
And
I'll check it out.
it's so it's a very serious dark show, but man, I was not expecting the direction it went in. That's all.
Why don't we leave it there?
Yeah.
Thank you to one and all for downloading, for listening. Hopefully the weather is getting nicer in your vector, wherever it is you find.
Good vector usage.
Thank you. Wherever it is that you find us. Thank you again for your support. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Come on back next week. Talk more college football. For that guy over there, Dan, for myself, Ty over here in Eastern PA. We'll catch you all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.